Yes, people. It's Jahf Reach coming to live and alive in the city of Jahf Reach. It's the Jahf Reach show. Open-minded, not blinded. I know you guys were excited for this topic. So today I have a special guest with me as promised. I have Brother Omo here with me today. And you guys can address him as Omo. I call him brother from another mother. So, Omo, please introduce yourself by telling the listeners your name and where you're from, please.
Hey. Hello, listeners all over the world. My name is Omo Ikuga. I am Nigerian by background, and currently I live in Toronto, Canada. I just want to thank you, my dear brother, for having me on the podcast today. I want to say it's a pleasure. And wherever you are, wherever you're listening, I just want to welcome you all as well to the program, and I hope it's going to be an interesting interaction tonight.
Awesome. We feel so blessed to have you. So today's topic, Omo, as you know, it's called lack of communication in relationships. So, most relationships fail because of lack of communication, little communication, or no communication. The belief is that 55% of communication is body language, 38% is the tone of voice, and 7% is the actual words spoken. Today, Omo, my guest here, and I will break down some of the issues regarding communication barriers in relationships. Relationships meaning parent and children, teacher and students, co-workers, and romantic scenarios. These are just some examples. So, Omo, without further ado, when you heard the topic, lack of communication, what came to mind?
Yes, communication. Thank you very much, my brother Casey. Communication is crucial. When I heard about this topic, it's indeed important, even in our present dispensation, when we look at relationship of all sorts. Just like you have rightly highlighted, communication is crucial. Communication by definition is the transfer of information from one person to another. And just like you have rightly highlighted, there are different facets. There is the non-verbal communication. There is the tone of your voice. There's a whole lot that has to do with communication. And a lot of relationship, the success of your relationship, largely is leveraged on the quality and the effectiveness of communication. So for us to be discussing this tonight, I think it's crucial, and I think it's critical, even in our existence as social beings. As far as our interaction is concerned, communication is indeed very crucial.
Thank you very much. I can definitely appreciate everything you just said. So, before we go much further in, I want to clear something up first. I understand you're a Christian. Is that correct?
Yes, I'm a Christian.
Awesome. Is there a different way or ways to communicate as a Christian as opposed to communicating as a non-Christian?
You see, thank you very much for that question again. You see, as a Christian, there is a distinguishing factor of the life of a Christian. And one of those distinguishing factors can be expressed even in our communication. If you allow me to refer to the scriptures in Colossians chapter 4, verse 6, it says, let your conversation be always full of grace, be seasoned with salt, so that you may know how to answer everyone. So there is a style, there's a distinguishing factor in our communication as Christians. He said, let our conversation be graceful. Let it be full of salt. Let it be seasoned with salt. As a Christian, your communication has to be respectful, has to be decent, has to be cultured, has to be filled with godliness, has to be filled with positivity. These are the things that characterize our communication. Has to be graceful. So even when we take it from the Christian perspective, there is a prerequisite. There's a recommended style of communication as a Christian. It has to be wholesome. It has to be a communication that can encourage people, that can inspire others. Not hurtful, not full of hate, not full of spite. Okay, but just like the scripture that we read, it has to be full of grace. There has to be a distinguishing element of your Christianity, of the life that we have received in Christ. So, I mean, just to answer your question, indeed, there's a Christian style of communication. I would want to agree with that.
Okay, perfect. So just wanted to get that out of the way for all the listeners here. So, question. Majority of people today communicate by means of email, instant messaging, or direct messaging, or some form of texting. How do you think this affects communication?
You know, Casey, the world has, just like you said, the world has largely evolved with the advent of technology, information. We live in an information technology era where we rely largely on smartphones and all kind of gadgets, such that the critical component of one-on-one communication has gradually been eroded. And I want to say it has largely, I would say, affected negatively the effectiveness of communication, even in our present dispensation. I would want to say that.
Okay.
Because when you get to communicate through a gadget like a smartphone, text message, emails, there is a component of the physical contact, which is like the non-bodily communication, which is crucial. You have attributed a large percentage of the quality of communication to those non-verbal components. Indeed, this is absent. From a text message, I don't have the privilege of looking at you eyeball to eyeball. You cannot appreciate my full expressions, as opposed to having it's a one-on-one conversation where we get to really appreciate ourselves in the spectrum of our expressions.
Definitely, I'm in total agreement with that. I believe truly that face-to-face, one-on-one, in-person interaction does a lot, and it takes and attributes to a lot of the basic fundamentals to communicating. So I'm definitely in total agreement with that. We'll talk more about it later, but I got a next question for you, because a lot of people were asking some questions, and we're taking emails and messages from some of the listeners, or based on what they would want to hear in the show today, this blessed episode. So question, it would be, messaging has no tone, which makes it easy to misinterpret the tone of the person using the message, right?
Yes.
So with that being said, it usually leads to conflict and oftentimes blocking or a major hurdle or stumbling block. What is an alternative or substitute to messaging someone? What can we use to replace messaging?
Quite unfortunately, I mean, the way the world is designed, we're all in a fast lane, so you cannot totally eliminate the need or the feasible requirement for messaging. I mean, it's a mainstay. It's what defines us these days. You might not have the luxury to always have a face-to-face conversation with everyone. But I want to just emphasize here that it is indeed crucial in a relationship to also try to incorporate that face-to-face conversation beyond just messaging.
Yes.
It is indeed crucial. That way you get to appreciate yourself in in another dimension, as opposed to be. I mean, a message cannot effectively, express your thoughts. You cannot especially, effectively express it in a message. So to address the shortfall, I would suggest that we are able to incorporate a level of one-on-one communication as well, and not just rely totally on messaging.
So basically what I'm hearing you saying is that we can reduce messaging and leave it until it's absolutely necessary. Like, keep it short. If it's an emergency, or pick up the bread at the store for me, just check to see if my car is locked, something like that.
Absolutely. Messages could be tricky. Messages could be misinterpreted. Messages could be filled up with all kind of ambiguity, where you cannot really provide adequate clarity, and all this can lead to misunderstandings, and it can also lead to strife in a relationship. Yes, so I want to attest to the fact that it might be indeed necessary to reduce the messaging and also have some kind of one-on-one, face-to-face conversation as well.
Perfect, definitely. I realize that even with the messaging, most of the time on every forum you look at, there is a lot of the block button. The block button is predominantly one of the most used button on any forum, whether it's your cell phone calling list, whether it's WhatsApp, whether it's any form of social media. Why do you think people are so quick to use the block button?
Well, in fairness to those that use the block button, the fact that the social space is available to all of us, where we can readily access it, it makes it susceptible to abuse. So I want to say indeed that some people abuse such privilege to just have access to disseminate all kind of information. Okay. So I want to say that indeed, the tendency for people to get blocked might be there, and there can be a justification for that, even in our present dispensation. So that means that communication has to be done with some level of decorum. There has to be some discipline when you have access to a group and the kind of content you want to put out there. You want to know when to message. You don't want to be a nuisance in terms of your messaging. In as much as you have a good information to put out there, you want to also realize that it's a shared space, and you need to there has to be respect in your frequency of messaging. There has to be control in the content that you put out there. That's why I believe many people get blocked. Yes, that's what I want to explain. Just people constituting a nuisance on groups. And
that is a perfect explanation. I love how you articulated that. Now, when it comes to blocking a random person or stranger or somebody you just made initial contact with, that works, and that's probably fine. A lot of people probably see that as okay. But what about having an interaction with your mom, your dad, a boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife? Sometimes you see them as they are still prone to blocking, even if they have to unblock later. But you see that as the norm now. Yeah. So what sort of advice or suggestion would you give to the person that is susceptible to blocking?
What I would say is you want to be able to address the fundamental reasons behind the tendency to get others blocked on your phone. And usually it's someone that constitutes a nuisance that gets blocked. So what I would say is this: if it's a close friend, if it's a family, I wouldn't be in a hurry to get that person blocked. All right? I will try to get across to this person and explain why. Explain my reservations. What don't you like about the person's style of messaging? What don't you like? What is that thing that the person does that warrants the person to get blocked? Have a conversation. Talk it over. If it is something, I would only want to resort to blocking when that attitude persists, and then I have absolutely no other alternative. I get the person blocked. I have family members who unfortunately I have to get them blocked because of their persistent nonchalance to my several position and remarks about their behavior in terms of their style of messaging. So what I would say is give room. My advice is give room for, and it boils down to communication. Through effective communication, you can actually express your reservations and your dissatisfaction to someone's position or the person's style of communication. So have that communication that hey, I'm not cool with this. I'm not cool with your style I'm not cool with what you're doing. I'm not cool with the messages you're putting out to me. If this persists, I would have you blocked. So what I would suggest is give that leeway, have that concession, have that conversation already, and try to express your grievance. Hey, I'm not cool with this. And it's only when, hey, of course, the person would persist, then you can go ahead to block such people.
So basically you're saying we can reduce using the block button if we were to utilize effective and proper communication, and if that doesn't work, then we can resort to using the block button.
Most definitely.
Awesome. That's a really great explanation and answer to the question. So we hear complaints that some people don't call to update you when they will be late or no longer show up for something they previously planned. This can actually be an annoyance or a nuisance based on most people's definition. Give some suggestions for those people who are the ones that typically do not say when they're going to be late or if they're not going to show for something they previously planned.
I mean, once you have set up an appointment, I mean, the most respectful and cautious thing to do is to meet up with the appointment at the set time. If for some reasons you cannot be there at the scheduled time, it is important. It's a sign of courtesy. It's a sign of respect to give a heads up. Hey, I'm not going to be there for the party. I'm not going to be there for the meeting. I'm stuck in traffic. Or I'm canceling altogether. Send a message and then apologize because we have to respect our time. One of the ways by which you show respect to another person is to respect their time. The times you share together, the times that have been allotted that you should spend that time together for whatever objective should be respected. Once you're able to respect that, it shows that you have respect for that person. So for those people who want to just avoid meetings, skip meetings without even communicating, I wanna discourage it to a great deal, and I want to encourage them in a scenario where they cannot meet up for a meeting. The most cautious and respectful thing to do is to send a message prior to the time. Say a day, if it's a big event, a day before, if reservations have been made already, you give adequate notice as to why you cannot be there, so that any changes can be effected. I mean, it's just the right thing to do.
Yes, that makes sense. I'm sure a lot of the listeners are actually going to appreciate that one for numerous reasons. Some people tend to get mad or upset or shut down completely sometimes when communication is not going their way. So basically they may feel overwhelmed or suffocated. They may want to walk out or lash out. If you were to get angry in a relationship, and these are for the listeners, if they were to get angry in a relationship, what way or ways would you suggest to minimize the frustration that the communication is not going your way?
Okay, so when you talk about communication not going, their way, this has to do with they being overwhelmed.
So basically, I'll give an example.
All right.
Mom and daughter is having a conversation, and the mom is trying to get her point across. The daughter is trying to emphasize on her point, and despite trying to elaborate on the points, they can't seem to get anywhere. So one gets frustrated and storms out or lashes out, breaks something in the home, slams the door. So it's a sign of anger. How and what suggestion would you give to the listeners that they know how to avoid this form of getting frustrated and angry?
Yeah, you see, what I would say, this borders on what I would call communication style. And every relationship has a unique style of communication, just depending on the individuals that are involved. Now, just to be able to address this question fundamentally, communication is a way of expressing your thoughts. It's a way of expressing your feelings. It's a way of expressing what you want. It's a way of expressing your desires. It's a way of expressing your opinion regarding an issue. And at all times, communication may not really go your way because everyone might not share your opinion. All right? So there's a critical factor that must come to play here, which is empathy. I call it empathy. Empathy has to do with seeing having a perspective about an issue from another person's point of view. It's called empathy. And this must be a component of your communication. So when both of us, like that scenario you kind of brought up, where you have a mother and daughter trying to have their way. Once everyone is trying to have their way, it's going to bring strife. It's going to bring quarrels. It's going to bring hate. It's going to be laced with a whole lot of emotions. All right. If anyone cannot at least see the issue from the other person's point of view. So this is one thing I want to also highlight on this matter. Communication must be laced. It must be graced with empathy, such that you're able to sort of attempt to comprehend the issue from the other person's perspective. Even when you disagree, you want to show understanding. You want to show you want to show that you share in the person's feeling and how that issue affects the person. Okay, but you also want to be able to let the person see it from another. You want to acknowledge that and then change the person's perspective. So this is a more effective way to communicate. Yeah. You want to tell that little girl that, hey, I see I know what you're going through. I know that this is what you want to do. You might even attribute it maybe because our friends or everybody else is doing the things that way. But you want to also establish trust with that child. That, hey, I know that this is what you do, but I have the best I have the best intentions and the feelings for you, and I think this is the right thing to do regarding this situation. Oh, wow. So I think empathy is crucial. It's one of the basic elements that must be expressed in your communication style.
I like that. I really like that. So just to add, tell me here, so would you say listening to because I really loved how we touched on the point of listening to what the person has to say and getting to a point where you let them know you understand where they're coming from and you understand what they're trying to say, even though you feel like your point is valid. Yeah. So I really like that. So would you say it's important to respect the opinion of the other person you're in the conversation with, even though your beliefs may be different to theirs?
Yes, and I must tell you, as much as I agree with it theoretically, it's difficult. In practice, it's difficult. That's why it's something that has to be practiced to be able to respect other people's opinion. Because we live in a world where everyone wants to be heard, everyone wants to be respected, everyone wants his own personal opinion to stand true and to be valid. You know what I mean? So the tendency to respect other people's opinion is crucial. And in terms of practice, it takes a lot of listening. It takes a lot of listening. It takes a lot of engagement to be able to appreciate someone else's point of view. It makes them feel respected. It makes them trust you, even in terms of their feelings and their opinions regarding an issue. All right? So it's critical. It's critical. It's critical to respect the opinions of others. If you don't respect another person's opinion, you might not even get them to change their opinion.
Wow, that is so powerful. Yeah. I love the answer, and this question that I just asked, it wasn't something that I had scripted, but I really love where it went to with empathy and respect as a combination. It definitely shows, and I really love what you just touched on, that you may not get somebody else to change their perspective, view, or mindset or opinion if you don't see the other person's view, opinion, or perspective first. Absolutely. That's powerful. That's deep. This show is all about edifying. It's all about education, inspiration, and motivation. It's all about successfulness. It's all about being open-minded, not blinded. And this is why we love having people like you come in that can elaborate on certain things from us, not necessarily a professional standpoint, but from a personal standpoint and a standpoint where your experience or life experiences have taught you these things. Because sometimes you can't learn these things in schools or books, but the way you word it, we definitely see a better and brighter picture. So I can definitely appreciate that. Brings me to the next question though. There are some major stumbling blocks when it comes to communication. Sometimes both people are saying the same thing, but both want to be heard. What advice would you give to them?
I would say they should, to address that issue, like we said earlier, everyone wants to be heard. Everyone wants to be heard. And I think one of the skills that we should all try to practice and develop is listening skills. Is to listen. Is to listen more. You know what I mean? Is to listen more. When you get to listen, you get to understand you get to really see things even between the fine lines. You get to see a greater perspective, and you get to gain a better understanding of the other person's point of view. So for those who always want to be heard, I would just encourage, hey, listen more. Listen more. Listen more. It takes nothing to listen. It takes nothing out of us to listen more. And when you listen more, you actually gain respect when you listen. People like to, have relationships where I meet people who say, hey, when I talk to this person, I find out that I was able to realize myself better. I find out that I said things that I didn't even realize I had those potentials. I find out that I was able to express myself in a dimension that I didn't even realize. And guess what? What caused that trick was the capacity of the other person to listen effectively. So you cannot overemphasize listening, even in a world where everybody wants to speak. I want to suggest that we should all learn to listen more.
Okay, so this is a question from a couple in Virginia. So they wanted to find out if a relationship gets to a place where it's lacking communication, there is little communication or no communication at all, what's the simplest way to move past this?
So little or no communication, there has to be an active, to address little or no communication in a relationship, there has to be an active effort and a strategy to improve communication. And it has to be the willingness of both parties. All right? So if a couple, if they realize that there's a communication breakdown, I would suggest that they find time to really spend some time together and talk. Communication is easy. What do you want to talk about? There's always something to talk about. You have to have times where they are devoid of any form of distractions. Their phone, the TV, they just have set out their own private time to talk, essentially. And there's always something to talk about. How was your day? Talk about your day. It's a very conventional but yet powerful way to sustain communication, even within couples. How was your day? I look forward to sharing. Every day I look forward to sharing how my day went with my spouse. And she's also excited to hear. I'm also excited to hear, I'm excited to hear how our day went, just as I am, Have time to have that non-verbal communication for a couple. Have time for intimacy. Have time to really understand, share your feelings, share your position. What do you want? I feel, I want, these are terms that should be used more in relationship. Have time to express yourself. What are your desires? What are your positions? What are your reservations? So I think communication has to be, you have to put, and I would want to suggest to that couple, they must put in the effort. They must put in the effort to say, hey, this is what I need to do. If you have to change environment, if you have to take walks on the park, spend some time together in a different environment, take some time out to just talk. Just talk about something interesting. Tell a story. Have time to just engage one another. Have time to look into your eyes. Have time to hold your hands and talk. Those are things that are crucial, even in ensuring intimacy and even addressing the issue of lack of communication in a relationship.
Wow, that's powerful. That's deep. I like that. So if I can add to that, or maybe even ask a question, when and if this happens, in order for this to happen, I would imagine the door for communication has to be open. So, if that door isn't open, none of these things can take place.
That's true.
Some people shut down conversations before the communication can even happen.
Yeah.
So, how do we get to a point? I'll give an example. Say, for example, again, husband and wife are talking about something, relationship partners are talking about something, one person doesn't like that idea, doesn't understand the other person's point of view, so they say, I don't want to talk about this anymore, or I'm going to bed, or message me later, or we'll talk about this tomorrow, or I don't care about this topic or subject. So that basically kind of shuts down the conversation or the topic right there. So what is one way you would suggest to leave the door to communication open? Like how can we word it to address it so the person knows we can come back to it at a later date and they don't feel violated or disrespected?
Absolutely, yeah. So there are styles. I mean, there are strategic styles to be able to address issues like that. If someone is not even ready to talk about an issue, if they feel so overwhelmed at the moment, such that they are not willing to talk about an issue, I think the right thing to do, just to show respect, is to let it slide. Is to let the person be for the moment. Okay? It's all about timing. It's all about understanding your partner to know the convenient time to bring up an issue. All right? There would always be time to discuss an issue. Of course. I mean, depending on the gravity of the issue as well. Okay? But what I'm trying to say in essence is you don't always want to force an issue down your partner's throat if they are not willing to discuss it at the moment. It's a like you use the word, it's a kind of violating your partner's point of view or the partner's feelings altogether. So what I would say is, I mean, if an issue cannot be addressed at the moment, let it be. There's always a right time to bring it up. And that way you will be able to really, have an effective conversation, and then the issue can be put to bed.
Wow. It seems like we're going to be spending some time on this question here. So the couple from Virginia, they must be grateful. So we thank you. I want to thank you on their behalf, Omo. So what I want to say now to add to what you were just saying there, you're saying there is times and places to bring up the topic without the person or one or two persons feeling violated or disrespected. So give us a scenario or an example of a right time and a right place, most importantly, to bring up a sensitive topic or revisit a sensitive topic. Because for me, for example, I would always think about, I like food. If somebody wanted to bring up a topic to me that was already a touchy subject or sensitive to me, I would want them to bring it up to me after they serve me a nice big plate of food, whether it's home or at a restaurant. Yep. So what's a nice place or setting or timing that you would think to suggest that you can bring up a sensitive topic or subject?
What I would say is this: you want to bring up, there's a basic rule that comes to mind when we're pondering about this issue. You never want to aggravate someone who is already stressed or who appears to be aggravated. So if I want to have a rule of thumb regarding this issue, you don't want to bring up a sensitive, this is my approach. Never bring up a sensitive issue when someone is stressed. I'm just in from a long, tiring day, and then my spouse is bringing up an issue about one challenge that just came up. I'm already tensed. You might not be able to get the right response from me. This is a rule of thumb. So I mean, it's not cast in stone, but there's a rule of thumb that applies. You want to ensure that person is relaxed, just like you said. You bring up an issue about food over a nice, a nice bowl of food. I mean, of Nigerian fufu and eggs. That's the right time to talk about the food, the different types of food, and all kind of cuisines. And trust me, you're going to enjoy the meal even more. So the thing is, look at the most convenient time. Once someone is already stressed or he appears to be aggravated, this is where the body language, this is where emotional intelligence comes in, how you're able to know the best time to present an issue, such that you get the best response from that person. So I think that's a rule of thumb. Do not aggravate someone who is already stressed. That is it. Don't try to bring up an issue to someone who is already under pressure. You will not get the right response.
Oh wow, that's perfect. That's, to me, right there. You can write a book and give these suggestions and hints, and it would be a bestseller. Not in the first week, but in the second week. For the first month or so, it would be a bestseller.
Thank you, man.
Next question is, what are two major tips you can give to help people avoid communication barriers in relationships? Because this seems to be the real issue at hand. the barriers, the hurdles, the borders. We all face them. When you get to these barriers, communication barriers in relationships, what are two major tips you can say, this is how you avoid getting to that barrier? We can avoid getting to that stop sign, that halt, if we do these two things.
One, I would say keep it consistent. Be consistent. Be consistent. Communication requires a level of work. Put in the work. Put in the work. Play your part. All right. Keep it open. Keep that communication open. Unfortunately, like we have highlighted earlier, we live in a world where a lot of our communication will rely on WhatsApp. Messaging, all kind of messaging platforms. But what I would suggest is keep it open. Try to keep it open. Try to, even when you don't get proper response, I would suggest if that person, based on the value of that relationship, I'll suggest that you keep it open. And then secondly, I want you to show genuine concern regarding the person. Hey, how was your day today? Hey, good morning. I'm wishing you a lovely day ahead of the day. Hey, it's lunch break. I'm just reaching out to say hi. Show genuine concern in a relationship. Everyone is going to respond positively to someone that shows genuine concern. Hey, and of course, you don't want to even make, depending on your relationship, you don't want to make it an everyday thing. You want to show some kind of respect too. Hey, it's weekend. Hey, I was just chilling over the weekend and I'm just thought to say hi. What are you doing? I hope you're doing good. Just genuine concern. One or two lines to show that, hey, this person actually cares for you. So two things is consistency, and secondly, show genuine concern. Those are the two things.
Wow.
Those will largely ensure that the communication barrier is opened, because it's going to build that flow, because it has to go back and forth. It's going to build that flow, and it's going to build your relationship at large.
Wow.
Yeah.
So basically, if we can put those two tips together, we can call it genuine consistency. And the results of that, we will have a positive impact. That's powerful. That's deep. So we have one more question for you, Omo, and I'm sure people are really enjoying the show. I look forward to the comments, the feedback, the reviews, the views, the shares, everything. But one more question for you, and then we'll get you to tell us a short bit about yourself after we take a small break. One more question. What's one or more strategy or strategies you can give to help people avoid getting to a place where lack of communication begins? Because we understand the barriers. You get to a place where there's a barrier. Barrier, basically, you can't move past the barrier. Yeah. It can lead to block or no more communication, or both people going separate ways. But lack of communication starts at a point where you start losing interest in speaking to the person anymore. You feel violated or disrespected or neglected. How do we get to a place where we avoid this from even happening?
Yeah. So I would also want to address this again by a fundamental rule. You see, when the issue of contempt regarding anything, like how do I put it? I think I'll put it this way: once something loses its value, then people begin to respond to it with contempt. So that's a fundamental principle. So when your communication loses value, once you lose value in your communication, that person now becomes the person now gets a kind of contemptuous response, such as blocking or some kind of hindrance, or just no communication at all. So what I would say is ensure that there is value in your communication. Ensure that what you share are things that can inspire others. Ensure that what you share communicates empathy, genuine care, like we said earlier. Ensure that you're not just being a nuisance. Don't get to that point where you now become a nuisance and then someone gets to just block you. Okay? Ensure that there's genuine value. If you have to share a material, or if you have to share a thought, ensure that it's a thought that is inspiring. Ensure that it's a thought that motivates. No one No one responds contemptuously to wholesome communication. I want to say that. So once your communication is devoid of true and lasting value, you would have a contemptuous, or a spiteful response. So what I want to say is, I want to encourage everyone out there is keep your communications. We talk about consistent. We talk about showing genuine concern. Keep it. Ensure that your communication is of value. Essentially, the kind of thoughts that you pass across are thoughts that can add value, that can inspire, that can enlighten, that can uplift, that can ensure that we're all making progress. Ensure it's progressive, in orientation. Ensure that it's something that is positive. Ensure it's something that can generally add value. That way, you're going to keep it's like an audience, like someone speaking to an audience. If you are not giving value, you're going to lose your audience. So that is what works in communication. We want to be able to uplift ourselves and inspire one another. Ensure that there's content. There's appropriate content. Once your communication becomes petty, and is filled with, just everything that's just arbitrary, it loses its value, and you get a response, such kind of response like blocking. So that's what I want to say. Yes.
So all of the questions are very valid. All of the answers are genuine. I love it. I love the answers and the responses. I love how in depth you were. And I love the last two questions especially because if I sum it all up, tips and strategies, I put it together, your responses are basically to be having genuine, valuable consistency.
Oh, there you go.
Genuine, valuable consistency.
There you go. You can say that again.
So, right at this part of the show is where I give my tips and strategies. So this is my part of the show where I come in and I say, listen, based on everything I heard, based on everything I believe, and we can save some for another show at another time because the topic is very broad and we can go on and on about it. But my tips and strategies, what I'm going to leave the listeners with today, is try not to assume. If something seems like it, it doesn't mean that's the case. Be respectful to each other. The way you would like someone to communicate with you, be the first to initiate that process. Basically, the change you want in somebody else, you must first possess it within yourself. Remember, a message is nice, but not better than a phone call. But in person beats that all. Strategies we're going to look at right now, my strategies I would suggest is try to pay attention to the words the person is saying. Don't listen to reply, but listen to understand. Please respond to messages in a timely manner and don't ignore parts of the questions or comments being made. Omo, I want to thank you so much for coming in today.
Thank you.
And this is your time where you tell us every and anything you would like the listeners to know about yourself and, if possible, how they can connect with you.
Okay, so thank you again. Thank you very much, my dear brother Casey, for having me. Listeners out there, I want to believe that you all enjoyed the program today. My name is Omoy Puga. I live in Toronto, Canada. I like to motivate people. I like to inspire people. I believe in relationship. I believe in good relationship. I also believe that relationship is crucial to our success. Even as individuals and even as a community. So I want to be. I'm inspired to be part of programs like these and activities like these where we can enlighten people and encourage people to get better in their lives in general. So thank you very much again, Brother Casey, for having me, and I want to appreciate everyone out there. Thank you.
You're welcome, and we thank you. We appreciate you so much for coming in. Everyone, please remember, on behalf of the Jahf Show, the concept is open-minded, not blinded. We want to thank Omo so much for coming in. We do appreciate his feedback, his views, his comments, his opinion, his facts. He even touched on some data from the Bible. Remember that. If you guys have any comments or any questions at all for Omo, you can forward it to our email address, the Jahf Reach Show, or jahfreach@gmail.com, or any one of the messaging platform on our social media. Please remember to find us at Jahf Reach, that's JAHF Reach. You can Google, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, SoundCloud, iTunes, Facebook, WhatsApp, and all that. Comment, share, like, and subscribe. Please remember, don't keep the message to yourself. Share it with someone else. Until the next one, this is Jahf Reach, not Jahf Come.